Once again, it's Greg the Mile High Triker. It is yet another incredibly gorgeous day here in Colorado. The temperature is around 70 degrees, I'd guess. It's about noon. Beautifully cool day. I don't have to worry about getting scorched in the 90s like usual. And today is yet another special day. My birthday is August 30th, as you saw in my last video. Today is September 13th, 2021, 2 weeks after my birthday. Today, my mother would have been 95 years old if she were still alive. So let's talk about my mom. My mother's name, her maiden name, was Norma Emma Castañeda. And she was born on September 13th, 1926, in Lima, Peru, in South America. Now, I don't know a whole lot about her upbringing and the way things were for her in Peru. I have a lot of photographs that she carried with her and stuff like that, but my mother didn't talk a lot about the way things were for her as a child in Peru. The next important year for my mom was 1953. A very important year historically for many things. It happened to be the year that Queen Elizabeth was coronated as the Queen of England the same year. As a matter of fact, she and my mom would have been the same age. The Queen is also 95. Anyway, in those days, in the early 1950s, people did not fly as they do today. My mother took a boat from Lima, Peru, through the Panama Canal, and she landed in Miami, Florida. One thing that's important to point out is my mother did this entirely alone. She did not come with anyone else. She had an uncle who lived in Salina, Kansas. So she went there to stay with him. But for whatever reason, she didn't find Kansas to her liking. She didn't stay there for long. Next you hear of her, she's in San Francisco, California. So in a very short time span, my mom went the full width of the United States, like 3,000 miles. She was there in San Francisco for a while, and that's where my older brother, Ken, was born. He was born in 1955. And then, I don't know, for whatever reason, my mom didn't like it there either, so she moved here to Denver, Colorado. And a couple years later, that's when I was born. Now let me tell you a little bit about my mother's personality, the sort of person that she was. My mom had a limited education, not even what would be considered a full high school education here in the United States. But she was a very knowledgeable woman. She read extensively. She always had newspapers around. Remember, she passed on before the internet really took hold. She always had books. She was always very interested in PBS programming. Remember, there was no cable then, early on when I was a child. It was only starting to become a big thing about the time that she died. But she passed that on to us, her children. My mother, she loved wildlife of all kinds. She was the most unusual woman in that she was not afraid of spiders or snakes or frogs and toads or any of those sort of things that most women consider to be creepy crawlies. She loved insects and spiders. She had a particular fondness for jumping spiders. She thought they were cute because they were kind of furry. She was a financial wizard. How she was able to pull off some of the things she did are simply beyond me. And she did this without assistance from a man. She had some problems with her relationships with men. And after struggling for a while, she said, I'm not going to have anything to do with them anymore. And I'm going to raise my kids on my own. She raised 3 sons virtually entirely on her own. She managed to buy 2 homes because she didn't believe in wasting money for anything. Her motto was live beneath your means. Then she decided to move on to buy a second home, and instead of just selling the old house, as the way most people would do it, you know, selling it and then the bank takes over for the other person, my mother carried the loan herself. How many people do that? Anyway, the way it worked was the person the buyer paid my mother directly, and an interest in everything. So none of it went to a bank. So my mother used this income when she retired from her job. She used this income along with her Social Security income and some retirement income from her union where she worked, and that was how she survived. My mother was an absolute wizard. My mother was also very interested in, guess what? One thing in particular that applies directly to what you're seeing right now. My mother was very interested in photography. She loved cameras. So what you're seeing right now is a direct result of some things that I've learned from her. I mean, they didn't have GoPros then, or 360 cameras, or even digital cameras. But I learned to frame a shot and to be very particular about what I do with my photography from her, the basics of it. I learned to love animals from her. I learned to be very interested in science and history and many other things because of my mom. So, needless to say, I owe her a lot. Anyhow, one day, I used to call her every day because I was concerned about her and I wanted to know how she was doing. One day I called her and I couldn't reach her on the phone. And I knew something was wrong. I lived all the way across town. And I went to her house to visit her. Of course, I had a key to get in. I found my mother looking like she was sleeping on the sofa. She looked very peaceful. So the end came. It wasn't violent at all. It didn't look like she suffered a bit. She looked like she just laid down to go to sleep, and that was it. My mother was 73 years old. That was March 14th, 2000. So she's been gone more than 21 years now. Needless to say, I miss my mother every single day. And her influence is very profound. Even though it's been 20 years, especially at this time of year, because our 2 birthdays are so close together. My mother was an extraordinary woman. And I'm glad I could do this tribute to her on what would have been her 95th birthday. So that's about it for this episode of the Mile High Triker. As always, I thank you for joining me. If you like what I do, please like, subscribe, and share. And as is my custom, here's a video interlude with some music. And you can take a look at a little bit of what the toll gate trail looks like. Thanks again, and see you next time.